and welcome to Haircolor Confessional. Today we have Mr. Andrew Walker. He's an executive director of the Amon Museum of American Art since 2011. Welcome, Andrew.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here.
We're so excited to have you, and we have so many questions.
All right, dive in.
Yes.
All right.
Well, tell us the story of how you came to work for the Amon Museum.
Well, that's a great long. It depends on how much time you have, but I came here most recently in 2011 from St. Louis, and I had been for about 9 years the deputy director of the St. Louis Art Museum, focusing on managing the group of, I think at that time, around 10 curators, and then also being the curator of American art simultaneous. And it was a big job, as you can imagine. It was the first big management job for me. The museum at the time that I got there was at the beginning of a process of building a new expanded museum. So there was a lot of energy and effort about how do you raise that money for a $180 million new building, and how do you begin to shift your engagement around what the museum will represent in the community. So I got, a good way down the path on that, but we were in the ground, maybe all the way in the ground with the expansion when I was curious about what the next step for me would be. And I had a great colleague who runs a museum in Memphis who said, well, if you want to direct a museum, you've got to start somewhere. And there was a lateral position at the Amon Carter at the time for me as a chief curator, basically. And I went and had a great time meeting the governance, or the board members and the family members. And I, came back and I said, you have a great institution. It's marvelous, but I'm really ready to be a director.
Yeah.
And so I said, I'm going to pass at this time. And about 6 weeks later, they called and said, you know what, we're ready to hire a new director. So would you still be interested in being considered? And I said, yes.
Well, good thing you brought that up and just threw it out there.
I know, right? It was a risk for me. I had to have some moral support in my circle of advisees at the time.
Well, and I'm glad that you mentioned a little bit of your past. You have climbed the ladder to get to this point. So where are you from, and how did you get from point A to point B to now to the Amon Carter?
Well, it's funny because I think about this a lot, and in various ways when I'm sitting alone thinking about what's my story, how would I write my autobiography?
Right.
But
exactly. We all want to know how you got from the beginning to the end, and what your characteristics are, what your hobbies are, why art.
Well, it's funny. I'm the youngest of four, and some of my family are interested in art, and one of my brothers, or my one next oldest brother, is an artist, but his journey in life has been complicated. So it was unusual for me within the circle of people that I grew up with, and including my parents. But my mom was a poet.
Oh, wow.
And I know, right? And I was born in the great state of Iowa, but I grew up basically. My home.
Well, they say that if you're a poet, you're definitely a genius.
Oh my God!
In literature.
Oh my God! I'm taking you home with me. No,
yes.
But that's not true. But my growing up, I always call home Pittsburgh. That's where my family moved when I was 6 years old, and my mother would go every weekend to the Carnegie Museum or Carnegie Library where her poetry group was, and I would always go with her. And so I would hang out at the art museum in Pittsburgh in my afternoons on Saturday, and I got very comfortable. I mean, it's an interesting thing because a lot of times we've found in the industry that people who frequent museums for whatever reason, art museums, have an easier time in their journey, in their long-term journey to be there, right?
Right.
So I was going when I was in fourth grade pretty regularly, and so it wasn't unusual for me.
And do you remember what you would be attracted to in the museums? Were they dinosaurs, or were they Egyptian pieces?
It was the art, and I was a big fan of Rene Magritte, who is the great French surrealists, which, they're very approachable as works of art, and they had a kind of narrative fantasy to them. So as a young man who enjoyed monsters and vampires and, all that crazy stuff, Magritte, as an artist, as well as others, I just found their narrative quality really interesting. So I would spend my weekends, or at least part of my weekends, at the art museum while my mom was arguing about poetry.
Right.
But my other brothers and sisters didn't necessarily share that with me. So it was something that was not, if not private, it was very personal.
Absolutely. Because I think to the individualist, you look at these pieces of art and kind of imagine where you're going, and then trying to figure out what the artist was trying to represent that period of time.
100%. So when I finally was at that point, right, and as a young man to go to college, I ended up going to a small school in Maine, a liberal arts college in Maine. And my freshman seminar was on Michelangelo, weirdly. I mean,
Amazing.
you don't get to choose, or at least at my college, you didn't get to choose. They assigned you. And I had a great professor, and I really got drawn into art history. So I majored in art history over the course of that time. When I graduated, I was foolish enough, against all the advice of others, that I wanted to, even as a young undergrad, to work in the museum world. So
right, because you're not making enough money.
And there's no money there.
There's no money there. 1% of the population goes to the museums, especially
Right.
in the United States. Europe is a totally different ball game. Seems like their families go to the museum on a weekly basis.
More regular basis.
Yes,
for
so
sure.
there's a bigger population. But in the United States, it's considered that it's more of not a lower income. It's more of the prestigious 1% of people go to the museums.
It is, I think you're right, and I think part of the over the arc of my career, anyway, the nature of my commitment has been to change that.
Absolutely.
Because especially here in Fort Worth, it's free at the Carter, anyway, at the Amon Carter, and the Kimball, for the most part, which is the other museum and one of the other museums in Fort Worth, is also free generally. And what a great opportunity to have an experience with your family
Right.
of something
Absolutely.
that can be really energized. Now, of course, you need help in that process.
Right.
And we try to build that infrastructure at the museum through our visitor service and our education programs. But when I was young, it felt a little different. And you're absolutely right. It was more of a, what did they used to call it? More of like a temple experience, right?
Right.
So you didn't feel necessarily that you had an invitation.
Right.
Because you had to have a knowledge or interest or expertise.
Not only did you look at a painting, but you didn't understand the painting, and then it's history. So why do I need to know about history? But there's a lot of representation with different artists, depending on the period of time that they were exploring these ideas and what was going on around them.
100%, yeah.
And so it's a very unique experience. I had the pleasure with my parents, with my dad. He exposed me to museums my whole life growing up. But my mom did not like museums. My mom was like, "Why do you want to know about history? You need to live in the present and move forward." But what I keep trying to explain to people is that it's telling a story. It's like reading a magazine. And if you really know that particular time period, which is, if it's in the 1800s or the 1900s, it really tells a story. And then when you understand if it's in France or if it's in Germany or if it's in the United States, they were all impacted.
100%. I agree with you. And I love that idea, at least in your experience, as you described it just now, and because it was similar for me, it was about storytelling. It was as easy for me as a young person to go to a museum and have an enrichment as it was to read a book or a magazine, because there was something that spurred my curiosity
Right.
and hopefully my imagination. And whether I was a nerd or not, which I was, it was elevating to a certain degree. And so even though people would discourage me, and I had those moments too.
Right. And I understand the discouragement because there again, you're not making a lot of money in the museums. And what are you going to do with that art history degree? I have asked, people
I've
have
heard
asked me
that,
that
yeah.
quite a few times. And I'm like, you can teach, you can curate, you can be in an art gallery, you can be in a museum, you can be in any kind of performing arts. But yet people are like, there's no money in that.
Well, and
But you had advanced your master's and then your PhD.
Yeah, I mean, that was part of it, at least in my moment. It's a little bit different today. But I had to make that decision, which was, I went to my college. I relocated to New York after that. I fought for work, and I worked at the Brooklyn Museum and a museum in Jersey City, and a bar and a bookstore. I did everything I could to be able to live as a young man. But, when you're 22, you can...
Yeah, you can take several jobs and do what you want to do. You can work at your favorite bar, or your
100%.
favorite restaurant,
Right,
or whatever.
Exactly. The hard part for me was spending my earnings on the bar.
Right.
But I also love too that the exposure that you had as a child and even as a young man in your 20s, your thought process evolves. So you might like something as being a youngster, but then when you're in your 20s and 30s, it evolves into something more. So do you like more? Is there a particular genre that you enjoy?
Well, that's a great question. I would say, and I've thought a lot about this more recently, because I do think storytelling is super important in the arts, because it provides multiple points of access for people of varying backgrounds, right?
Right.
So it can be, and there was a time when I was very focused on the aesthetic issues that were about the technical and, if you might call it, scientific dimensions to the way people created works of art on paint or in bronze or in clay or whatever it might have been. And that's become less important to me. And it's more about how can you tell stories that people can find points of entry that either relate to or are transformative to their life experience. And so I'm a fan of abstraction as well as realism. I mean, it doesn't need to be isolated to a specific style.
Right, because you've got surrealism and cubism
100%.
and
Love surrealism.
And I love it all. I love it all because I think not only are there artists that are dealing with mental health issues, they're dabbling into drugs, they're
Right.
doing, depending on the time period and then where the location, where they're at in the world. But there's so much diversity. But it's all behind a backstory.
100%. And we have a show. We just opened a show at the Carter called Cowboy, which it was organized by the Denver Contemporary Museum of Art in Denver, Colorado, and which sort of counterintuitively, the Carter is not a contemporary art museum, but we are deeply invested in contemporary issues. Right?
Right.
It's a complicated time.
And it's a little controversial because what I had seen online, it's a little controversial, and it might spark people a wrong way.
It could.
Even though it needs to be addressed and there needs to be equality, but it's very interesting. When I had seen the exhibit online and seen pieces of it, I was a little shocked.
It is different, and I'll tell you, this is the way I talk about it. And when I was at the opening celebrations just recently, I thought a lot about this in the comments that I was asked to make for the public, because the Carter as a museum has deep roots in the story of the American West.
Yes,
Amon Carter, was the great leader of our city for so many years.
Well, they were known for the Frederick Remingtons,
Right,
and they
exactly.
were known for what was it, Russell?
Charlie Russell.
Yes,
Yeah.
Charlie Russell. I mean, they were known for Western American pieces. And so just doing the research on the Amon Carter Museum, I've realized that you guys have really evolved into not only Western but American art. And then you've got there's a ton of modernisms
Yes.
and contemporary art as well.
100%. And I think part of the narrative with Cowboy is the story that Amon Carter was in the middle of as a collector, as a lover of the American West, was a story that was born out of his experience. And, arguably, that experience from the 1920s through the 50s was a story that the word I use is the story of colonizers. In other words, the Anglo population of America had a certain dominance in business and otherwise that was displaced other groups or didn't give access to power in the same way. And the easiest that it is to talk about is the indigenous community, for example. So, the natives lived here thousands of years before
Oh, absolutely.
the Anglos came. However, they didn't have the same access to power over time.
Alexa, turn it off.
And so what this show about contemporary views of the cowboy is saying, what if we ask the question about what that figure meant if we took away the colonizer point of view? So it's, people of different sexual orientation, people of different racial orientation, people who, for example, the one piece that really is, or story that is very powerful to me is the Asian American story of the Chinese immigrants who largely built the railway, or did build the railway, to the Transcontinental Railway. But their story, because they were workers and not funders or the business people behind it, didn't often get the acknowledgement as not being important from the point of view of its financial aspiration.
Right.
But
they were more of immigrants.
They were the people who did the work.
They were the people that did the work because
Right.
they were the immigrants.
So
and
what if
being Asian?
100%, right?
Yeah.
And what if we said, well, let's tell the story that included that.
Right.
So it's not confrontational. It's simply inclusive.
Right.
And
it's a different perspective.
It is.
That kind of opens the viewer's mind because not only are you, there's one, I haven't seen the exhibit in person, but online I had seen the dirt and
Yes.
then the pictures, and it really kind of gives you a three-dimensional visual. It's a unique experience.
Well, what's great.
So I can't wait to see it in person.
And you're asking absolutely the important question from my perspective, which is, it's not so much that we say, as a museum, that this is truth. We say this is a story.
Right.
What do you think? Right? And so the opportunity for engagement, for dialogue, for conversation is what the Carter and hopefully many museums across America are seeking. And if we step even away from the immediacy of the Cowboy exhibition, which I encourage everyone to go see.
Absolutely. Because I can't wait to go to see it in person and actually read the bio and actually read the interpretation of what's going on, actually, from my opinion to the actual reality of what you're trying to perceive.
And you know what, honestly, if it makes you uncomfortable, which it will for many people, I'm okay with that. And we don't judge that. We're more curious about that, which is how can we listen to your reaction or engage your questions so that we all get to be hopefully better people at the end of the day.
Right. But we're in the 21st century, and I think, expression is so imperishable to us, to the individualist. And so I
agree.
I think it needs to be there. I think it needs to be a topic that we do talk about. I think it's we're moving forward in this direction, and I think it's a great opportunity for us to explore it and talk about it.
And that's been, in my journey, the kind of progressive evolution. So as I left the world of being a curator, which is different, to being a manager, to being a director, the perspective about impact has shifted, which is when you're a curator, you want to, I'm going to say it this way, which is not always accurate. I'm going to get some blowback from other curators. There's a sense of your expertise as being unshakable, right? You're a historian, you've dug around the archives, you've looked at everything possible, and you're coming up with a point of view that you hope is convincing. And
Oh, it's definitely a shock factor.
yeah, 100%.
It's definitely a shock factor. But I love that you are taking forth that step in your museum to show the world what you guys can do.
Well, and I think,
and there again, I am so impressed with the Amon Carter Museum because I had no idea. I haven't spent a lot of time there, but I did go to the renovation when you guys did your renovation, and it's absolutely beautiful.
Well, thank you. I mean, the staff and the board were very intentional and proud to make it a space that, I mean, the space before was fine, but a space that was more conducive to community engagement, if I can say it that way. Bigger spaces, better lighting, wonderful materials, less confusion in your wayfinding the routes that you take through the museum.
There's something for everyone at that museum.
Yeah.
There really is. Not only do you have Western art, you have contemporary art, you have visual art, you have 3D art, and of course you have Georgia O'Keeffe. All
Can't
her
beat
beautiful,
her, right?
yeah. You have a red canvas. You have so many beautiful pieces of artwork. Is there a particular spot in the museum that you absolutely love and adore?
Oh my gosh,
because it's multiple levels.
Yeah, it is, and my I do have a favorite painting, which is on the second level, in the main permanent galleries, by an artist who was from the 19th century named Thomas Cole. Thomas Cole was a landscape painter and was oftentimes referred to as the progenitor of the native landscape school in America, which was important because as a young country in even the 1830s, we were vying for individual expression as a nation. So it would be easy to be a derivative of Europe or England more narrowly, since we came from there, as a people generally, of course, came from all over, but let's say Western Europe in general. But there was something unique about the experiment, both politically and physically, in America that artists wanted to capture. And so the landscape, which was our greatest resource at the time, became our most nationally promoted narrative.
Okay.
And there's one work by Cole called Garden of Eden, which of course for him and for many people in that day was an affirmation of the divine right of the American experiment, right?
Right.
It was one thing to be whatever it was, politically, socially, culturally. It was another to be able to say from a certain altitude that this was divinely wrought. And so that became part of the creative narrative that many people took up, and it evolved into an ideology called manifest destiny, which was, it was proclaimed in the heavens that the American people would settle the nation with the support of the highest being in the world, right, or in the universe. But in any event, he painted the Garden of Eden at the same time he was painting the Catskills and the White Mountains and other notable real landscapes in America. And for the Carter, it was the first time the museum in the early 90s bought a painting of a landscape that wasn't about the nation.
Oh, wow.
I
didn't know that.
I know, isn't that wild?
Yeah.
It was the first time a painting that was, in this case, kind of fantasy, because it was Garden of Eden. We all know about it biblically, maybe, but we don't know what it looks like.
Right.
And he painted it so that it had a correlation to what the American landscape looked like. So there's that part that just as a history nerd I love.
Yeah.
But it has, you know,
it's a great story.
Isn't it great?
It is a great
I'm
story.
going to have to go check that out.
Yeah, I heard about
100%. And it's on the
Yeah.
second floor, right at the top of the
Right,
stairs.
and
So maybe I need you to give me the tour. And
Well, you know, are you a member? I'm just kidding. I'm kidding. No, but
and it is on oil and canvas, right?
It is, and it's a big, you know, it's a large scale, 4 feet by 3 feet or something like that.
So the majority of American artists were doing landscapes, and then when avant-garde came in the early 1900s, and then the Europeans came over. Was it 1913?
Yes,
and they had the academy
right.
at New York, and the Europeans kind of shifted the Americans from doing landscape into modernism or cubism or surrealism and all those things, and they kind of bled through. And so then the Americans
it's well
really
expressed.
Shifted into this whole new era.
It did, and I think at the Carter, what you'll see is a two-step process. So really around the centennial of America's birth, so 1876, there was a shift in the both marketplace and in the artistic world that became more international.
Okay.
So the influence of Europe, largely, to be honest, it was a Western international world. Artists were traveling, they were studying, they were marketing themselves as individuals with personal style. Now, it's not to say that didn't exist prior to that, but it became a marketplace. It became an industry in the post-centennial era. And then that grew to exactly what you described, which was a major stylistic innovation in the early 20th century, where modernism, as we understand it, began to impact the more recognizable narrative of the past to being something that was more aesthetically driven, didn't lose the narrative quality necessarily, but you didn't have to be a realist. You could be a abstract artist,
right?
And find a viable opportunity. And probably the most important people in America doing
you
that.
had the famous Pablo Picasso coming over.
Right? Exactly.
And, he was doing wild and crazy things. I know he had started out doing portraits and landscapes, and then he got into cubism, and he evolved as an artist. But when he came over here to the United States in that period of time, he really rubbed off on the Americans.
He did, and
along with a lot of others.
And that 1913 moment was an important one. Physically, because it was the Armory show that debuted in New York and then went to Chicago.
Right.
And it really opened a door. And for the group that we have the strongest representation with at the museum is what they call the Stieglitz group, which included Georgia O'Keeffe and Marzine Hartley.
Her husband.
And
Alfred.
Exactly. Oh yeah, he was
Alfred,
he was
photographer.
Well, husband, not husband.
Right.
I mean, she had many lovers in her life.
Relationship, and if you look back at their relationship, it was really kind of toxic.
100%.
He lived in New York, she lived in New Mexico,
and that was very modernist.
It was a second marriage
too.
for him.
Exactly.
First marriage for her.
But if you go to the museum and go through the galleries, we don't install them chronologically, but if you see them sort of spatially charting that change, you can see it because the art becomes...
Well, they were all friends. You had Ansel Adams. He was friends with Alfred, he was friends with all the different people. It's kind of like the Impressionist.
100%.
They were all friends with each other and all evolving into... something bigger.
And I think part of it is this experimental quality, because you're business people, right?
Right.
You know that you have competition.
Right.
And you have to distinguish yourselves in some way in order to either carve out a niche or, scale your business to some level. And the artists were thinking about the same thing. So when they were looking at, let's say, the influence of a Pablo Picasso or a Henri Matisse or a...
Which is one of my favorites.
He's great.
He is one of my favorites, yeah. Matisse.
You can begin to evolved that to an American experience, which many of the American modernists did, and created. Well, this is what I would say. They became less artists painting a subject to being artists with an individual style.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yes.
And so, but
they're all in competition with each other.
100%.
I mean, you got Van Gogh. I mean, you have all these different artists that are really trying to be the best of the best.
In our day, they would be vying to be TikTok influencers.
The most famous.
Yeah.
So I hear you have your own art collection. You want to tell us a little bit about that?
Oh my gosh. I don't know. No, I do. I mean,
we don't know where you live.
Yeah, we're not coming to get it.
It's a very eclectic body of material that I have acquired over time. Part of it was, I mean, to be honest, it's like when my son left for school, and not that doesn't continue to be a financial responsibility to a parent.
It loosens up a lot of cash, doesn't
There's
it?
a different evolution, and I thought part of being a museum director for me is two things. One is when I was a curator, I was driving, to the best of my ability, the way a collection would grow, right? So I would be out in the market, I would find things, I'd bring them to my boss, convince he or she that this was important for the museum, and we'd raise the money or have the money and then go to the board and get approval. When you're a director, as I am, I mean, not every director is this way, I realize that's no longer my job. It's the job of who I was as a curator. And so the curators are out there doing that work. Not to say I don't have points of view or an opinion or even an idea, but I realized like part of that accumulation and acquisition was important to me as a person. So I thought, well, I'll just do it for myself.
Yes, you missed doing it, so you started doing it for yourself.
So I did it for myself. I do collect a lot of local artists here in Fort Worth. I've gotten to know that community fairly well.
So are you like Nancy Lamb that only
do.
buys Fort Worth art?
I have I had a text from Nancy Lamb this morning.
Did you tell her you were coming on here? She's been on here.
I didn't tell her.
You'll have to tell her. She's been on our episode. She's been on here before.
We had interviewed Nancy probably in season 2, and she had said, I only buy native Texas art, and because she really believes in supporting her community.
It's important.
And so tell us about your pieces.
So I have done that. So I have many.
So you have a piece of Nancy's.
I actually don't have Nancy's work, but I that's a aspirational goal of mine.
Mine too.
Maybe she'll paint you.
Her.
Maybe so.
Oh, that would be cool.
Yeah, I keep bugging her. I'm like,
well,
hey,
we
Nancy.
wanted her to paint us too, and she hasn't done it yet, or maybe she has. We just don't know.
She could. Did she ever take your picture?
Well, yeah, we have lots of pictures of us with her.
Well, and I love her process of how she paints.
Yes.
Yeah, that's that. I love her backstory.
Yeah.
I mean, she's a night owl.
Yeah.
Well,
but what else have you bought?
So locally, there's I'll just mention 3 artists. One is Sarah Ayala, who is a artist who was back in the first year that the Carter started to establish a program called Carter Community Artists. Now we don't, because it's very tricky to buy work of artists who are locally, but what we realized as an institution is we could employ these artists to help connect to the community. So Sarah was part of that first cohort of
and they
artists.
help with the kids program there. Yeah, that's awesome.
They do murals, they do studio work, they do all sorts of things. And we now have, I think we're in our 6th year, so we have over 25 alumni now who are part of this group, and many of them are recognized Fort Worth artists. TCU professors, others that have lives and identities outside of the Carter, but they understood the importance of the program and the connection to the community, which I see as very important. So Sarah she works with maps. She's also a pinstriper for the lowrider community in Fort Worth, which is huge, which you may or may not know. I didn't know. It's like the 2nd largest lowrider community in the state of Texas.
I didn't know that.
Yeah. And in fact, I know, isn't that crazy?
Right?
There's an artist named Charles Gray who is a painter, and I got to know him through early in his career. He was showing his youthful work at the Fort Worth Community Arts Center, and he painted a lot about his family experience. And I started to buy them, and he has now become, one of the more notable artists in Fort Worth. And I probably couldn't afford his work today, but I'm grateful for his friendship, actually. And he was at the opening the other night, which is wonderful. And then there's another young artist who's a muralist in town. I don't know if you've noticed, and I'm sure it's happening both in Fort Worth and here in Arlington, where, young artists whatever, young is a relative term. Let's say artists of note are doing murals.
Right. Like near Southside, they're doing a ton of them.
All over the place.
Yeah.
And it's changing. It's become a movement across the country, across the world, where it's not so categorized to be institutionally dominated. In other words.
Right.
Some whatever.
It used to be considered, graffiti, and now it's a beautiful piece of art.
And they're everywhere.
Yeah, and they're everywhere.
So this young artist, her name is Yana Renee, and she has done several murals throughout, and I have a couple of her paintings.
Okay.
And she's vivacious and vibrant and super talented, but also, just again in my experience, these artists, because I think Fort Worth, and you all know this, is becoming a much bigger place.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Every day.
Spread out every day.
Obviously I love Nancy Lamb, and I'd love to own an art piece of hers, but I like Ariel Davis.
Oh, she's great. Yeah.
Oh, she's beautiful. And she
Art
used
Space
to work
111
right.
is
Now
great.
I used to intern with Margie there.
Oh, you did?
Marjorie.
No
yep.
kidding.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, well, I have
Yep.
many of their artists in my collection.
Yes,
as well.
absolutely. Yeah, I did that for almost 3 months. I did an internship to figure out what I wanted to do after I got out.
Are you artistically inclined? Aside from your chosen profession, which is an art in and of itself.
Yes, I am, but I need to keep working at it.
Well, we're both a little crafty and artsy.
Yeah, I do like to paint. My favorite is oil, but I dabble in watercolors because that is the hardest medium to use.
It is, yeah.
And yet it frustrates me because I like to have total control over the paint. So
do you have mentors in that world?
I have had them in the past. Yes, absolutely. I dabble into it and then stop, and then I dabble into it and stop. I have a teaching certification in art.
Oh, wow.
So, I dabble in it. And
you should become a Carter community artist.
I probably could. I've got the qualifications for that.
Yeah, you do. You should totally do
know.
it. Okay, so what are the benefits of being a member there at the Carter?
Well, that's great. It's a great question, and it's qualify it by saying, as hopefully your audience knows, that the Carter's free.
Mm-hmm.
It was an important part of the founder of Amon Carter, and then of course his daughter, who basically built the museum and built the collection, Ruth Carter Stevenson, and the generations of the family that have followed after her, is that Amon Carter wanted his collection, which he gave to found the museum, to be free, because he only had access to art when he got wealth. Mm-hmm. And he said, you know what?
Right. We go back to that 1% again.
100%. And he was like, I want people, no matter what their financial situation might be, to be able to come and see beauty and creativity and challenging, issues. And so the Carter has held firm to that since its founding in the early 1960s. So the membership part is, since it's free, what's the reason to be a member? Well, what we do is two things. One is to say, if you believe in what we're doing, your basic membership can help us, and it's not outrageously expensive. Right. And what you get for that is, of course, communication about all of the programs that are happening.
You probably get emails.
100%. You get a beautifully produced magazine twice a year that outlines, what we've been up to, what the shows are
Right.
coming,
And I have
stories.
noticed that you guys in your emails and even on the online website that you guys do so many different happy hours every second Thursday.
Yep.
Is that correct?
Yep.
And then you're doing one coming up in October, and it's for the dogs.
Bring your animals.
You bring your animals?
Well,
Okay.
or your dogs.
So
Don't bring
did-
your cats.
so
Not this one.
Did Sasha Bass vie for that to bring your animals?
Oh gosh! Oh no! The Bass family has always been in all of its dimensions a support of the museum.
Yes, but she was at the last event and she did bring her dog.
She did bring
Yes.
her dog. She has her 2 animals that are very important to her. We have our director of education. I don't know if you know this or not. Not many people would know. Is a absolute fanatic for dogs, and
I
so
love it.
she was
So
like,
that's probably why you have a happy hour. Bring your pet.
Yep, bring your pet.
Bring your dog.
I
bring
love
your dogs.
animals.
I have my
I love
dog is
animals.
getting ready. I have to dress him appropriately, but
I
we'll
love
figure
it.
it out.
You're bringing your dog?
I will bring my
Well,
dog.
and I also know too that the Amon Carter has a archives.
Yes.
And it's got it's a museum library that we could go in there and do our research. And there's 50,000 pieces of archives. would
There
you call
are,
it?
part of when Ruth Carter Stevenson established the, framework that she wanted to have in order to build something of note. And what's really, I'm going to say this quickly, hopefully, but I think it's important, is when the museum was established in the early 1960s, the notion of Fort Worth being a nationally significant city was not always understood. And so the collection that her father gifted was originally meant to be a memorial to him. And she said, no way. Well, she didn't say it that way. But she said, we can be so much more than that. And that began this process to make the Amon Carter a very significant museum in the country, if not the world. And part of that was about the aspirations of the city at the same time. That Fort Worth would not be a follower, but a leader in the establishment of cities situated in the American West that would define the economic, social, and cultural world or cultural life of our nation. And it's taken time, but we've kind of become that now, and increasingly so. And I don't know how we hold on to the reins right now. I don't know if you all feel this too, but it's like the amount of change that is happening.
There's a lot of change.
But the Basses have always been part of that process too.
Right.
And they've not only seen that in the way that they've helped to build downtown.
Right. There's such big there's such big people to build up our city.
100%.
Right.
And so there's this network really of strong, smart, financially savvy individuals who have understood, and that just continues to kind of replicate itself in this particular moment. I mean, we have to hang on. You're going to have so many clients in the next 10 years of your business that you're not going to know what to do with, because this population is just growing.
Oh yeah,
and growing.
they just keep multiplying.
So we have a couple more questions before we have to wrap it up, and we're going to talk about products too. But I have one more question. I heard you're very interested in UFOs.
Oh my gosh!
Tell us about that.
Yeah, well, I mean, what do you want to know?
I'm interested too. I would like to know everything, but there's
Are
a
there
lot that we don't know.
conspiracies?
Of course, there's conspiracies.
Well, there
Most
are,
of
but
them
I
are
think
conspiracies.
underneath of that,
We don't know anything.
is the fact that more and more since 2017, with the government coming forward with the acknowledgement,
Yes.
twofold. One is that there's record of UAPs, they call them now.
Yeah, they had to change the name
They had to change the name.
because they didn't want to say they lied.
That's right. And UFO still carries all sorts of associations. So, but there's also the acknowledgement that, which the government denied for years, that there has been a program within the government to study
Yeah.
Unusual aerial phenomena.
Mm-hmm.
And so on that level, I'm just grateful that there's an awareness that, and I'll say this at the danger of being lambasted in your audience.
I think this goes into the category of what people don't know about you.
Yes.
But
Things you'll only tell your hairstylist.
That's right. The arrogance that we would imagine that we're the only people in the universe is kind of remarkable when you step back and think about that. So whatever that might be is, of course, up for debate. My belief is that, and I get this both from the UFO phenomena and the supernatural phenomena, the otherworldly ghost world, whatever you want to call it, is that what if we imagined, as Marvel has, that there's a multiverse, that where there are simultaneous timelines that intersect.
Yes, and that's what we're seeing, you think?
Yes.
Yes.
And that there are portals that allow at unique moments for people to move, or not people, but for experiences to move across time as much as space. So if you...
I believe people can do that already.
Well, and if you can suspend disbelief, then it's one way to think about the alien experience as not always being about little green men coming in ships from far away, but
I think of the movie Aliens when you are terrified of these gigantic things that morph out of the
and out of
the
your
cocoons
stomach.
and
yes no.
But what if it's more that that different timelines are crossing paths? So something that seems alien might actually just be something from the future or the past. Right. Anyway, that's probably more.
Hey, this might be another podcast here.
I just went. So I'll end this by saying.
You went into a little rabbit hole here.
I think there's a little truth in all the Marvel and DC
100%.
comics.
Oh yeah. How do you
all
think
the
they
movies.
got these ideas?
But this is what you do on your personal downtime, right?
You have somebody in the back that's saying, "Hey, put this in there," because that's true.
I just went to Dallas a couple days ago now to see the live experience or broadcast, whatever you want to call it, of Ancient Aliens live.
What? I didn't know that was in Dallas.
So all those talking heads, but also scientists and government officials who've been involved in this narrative gathered in Dallas to talk about the upcoming season. And if you haven't watched Ancient Aliens on YouTube or Prime, I think I'm watching it on Prime right now. It's worth watching 1 or 2 episodes because it's not crazy.
No.
These are people who are degreed professionals who, may be along the spectrum of belief, but they are also willing to acknowledge that there's phenomena that we need to understand better.
Right. There's so much unknown territory.
And aren't we lucky for that?
I know.
Right.
I know.
How boring would this world be?
Oh my gosh. It'd be, yeah.
Okay, so now we're going to talk about products. So, Christine, what did you bring today?
Okay. So this is a Wella product, and I spray it on it is called Thermal Image, and it's a Emmy product from Wella, and you spray it on. I like using it because I only shampoo my hair once a week.
You spray it on your hair?
I spray it on my hair, and then I blow dry my hair, and it seems to work really well. I mean, instead of using water, to blow dry my hair. But anyways, it's a heat protectant spray.
Okay.
And it works pretty good.
All right.
It's a beautiful bottle.
Right? And it's purple. I mean, you can't go wrong with purple.
I love that.
Okay, so I brought, it's a daily moisturizer for your face. It's called It's by It, and it's Confidence in a Cream. Anti-aging armor is what it says. Rejuvenating concentrate, transforming moisturizing super cream. It has it's for all skin types too.
Nice.
But
okay.
it's
I like to open bottles.
How do you apply that?
Just like moisturizer. Just moisturizer. Yeah.
You have to use
it has a really good smell to it too. Would you like to smell?
Do you have to use a sponge or do you?
Oh no, you can use. I use my hands.
Just
yeah.
your fingers.
I don't like to use a sponge because the sponge soaks it up and it wastes product. To me, it's just. I mean, my hands are clean when I put moisturizer on. So yeah.
And do you do it in the morning, the evening, or?
I actually could do that. I do it every morning, but I can also do it like in the afternoon if I'm about to go out again because it makes your face look a little more moist, like.
Like
youthful,
shinier, brighter?
Yeah, brighter, shinier. Yeah, it plumps it up just a little bit because it's putting moisture back in your skin.
And where do you
So
source that?
I want to say that I bought this at like Walmart or Target, but you can get it online, of course. You can get
So you
everything
go to
online.
Amazon and put
I
in your
don't.
name and
I actually shop in the stores more than I do Amazon.
you're a
For
better
things like
person
that
than me.
because I like to see it in person. If I really want,
Can you test it in the store?
I might
or-
have got that at
Sephora, maybe?
Sephora or Ulta.
Yeah.
Ulta has everything,
Oh, yeah, they definitely
but
do.
then what? I
I've
think
never
that's
heard of
Sephora
Ulta
that has
until
everything.
like just recently.
Really?
Is this a destination for
gosh.
products?
It's hair products and stuff. Yeah, body, hair,
and they're big.
makeup.
It's like a big box store,
It's got
right?
Yes,
every kind of
yes.
beauty product you would ever imagine.
Wow.
Your head will spin when you leave.
Yeah.
So could you or have you spent hours there? Like
No,
can you go in there and just
because
get
it makes my
lost?
head spin. It's
Yeah,
too
it's
much.
too much.
It overwhelms my brain.
No,
So
I
you don't
just
go
go
in
there for
saying I'm just spend
specific.
$10 and come out at
No, because you can't spend
$1,000
$10
poorer.
unless you're going to be like one little lipstick.
I go to
you
Ulta
can
for
spend about
specific.
$200, but supposedly if you get coupons, you can save a significant amount.
That's
So the
great.
thing about
Yeah.
Ulta is the one on Hewlin in Fort Worth, they have a little a machine where it's like a vending machine. You go in, you put
that's
your phone
right.
number in, and it'll give you get to pick of like 10 free samples, and you can do this every week.
for your zip code kind of thing, or is
They
it?
just want to see who's
It's just
doing
one
it.
Oh,
in
they want to
Hewlin.
track.
So
you.
you're putting your
Yeah.
phone number and your zip code. I
think
think you
that's
do
a
that.
great idea.
Do you get emails then, or do you get texts?
I haven't
or-
gotten anything. I actually haven't gotten any texts or emails.
But you think about it, a vending machine that you can use samples.
Yeah.
And then you can try a new sample and see if you like it, don't
Yeah.
like it.
And it's free. You can just, I don't know, I can't, I've gone in there at least 3 times and that's all I've gotten.
You didn't buy.
No.
Okay, Andrew, so what have you brought with us? Today.
I think the one that I'll mention, I brought a few things, but this is the one that I use most regularly because I don't have hair except on my face. So hair care is not top of mind.
Right.
Well,
But
you
I-
do have a beard, and
I
that
do.
is considered hair.
I
And a lot
know.
of times as hairdressers, when we're doing men's haircuts, and they're bald or partially bald, we actually are cleaning, we're doing everything. Face, neck, everything.
Yeah, you mean no, and I love that. I
Yeah.
love when that happens. I
I have several clients that do have beards.
I
and
always-
so I clean it up.
I always go when I go into not of your grade and level. I'm like, well, look, there's no hair, so give me the same price for hair and beard. But that
Yes.
doesn't always work.
Oh yeah, that's true.
Well, we charge for what we leave on, not what we take off.
Yeah, and I don't charge double because you have a beard. I mean, I do have several clients that have beards, and I mean, I don't
Yeah, I
charge
don't
them double.
either.
I just, do it.
Well, the so this is Cetaphil, which is a well-known brand, right? Is that
Yes,
accurate
yes.
on
Yes.
that? And I have a good friend actually who used to be in the marketing department for them. So she gave me this daily face wash, which I would have to say, I mean, it's great. The smell is not; it's more medicinal than it is
Like tea tree kind of.
flowery. Yeah. But that for me is fine.
Yeah.
I like that. It kind of wakes me up when I do it. And the only thing I'll say for me as a novice to this kind of care is it feels like improvement.
Yes.
As
Well,
opposed
Cetaphil's a
to-
great brand.
Is it?
Yes.
It is.
It has like really good stuff in it. It doesn't have a lot of toxins
Toxic
in
stuff.
it. Yeah.
So
I've
I
never
love
used
it.
it.
I do it as much as I remember,
Yeah.
which isn't every day, but it's pretty.
So it's a
consistent.
daily cleanser,
Yes.
right?
So when you just apply it as you described
Yeah.
the
Morning and
moisturizer, and I do it in the morning, and it helps me feel like I did something.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Other than
You are
roll
very
out
low
of bed.
maintenance here. Very low maintenance.
Very low maintenance.
But
It's
we
okay.
love it.
It's fine. It's fine. Okay, so let's tell our viewers how they can find you in the socials and stuff if you want to look right there.
Oh, great. Well, I'd say the main social would be to go to www.cartermuseum.org for the museum. And you will find a wealth of opportunities and experiences that happen and change over the course of the month. So check the calendar out. You can find out when to come and bring your dog. to the Amon Carter in the evening. They'll have not only photo opportunities, but treat opportunities.
Oh, wow.
I believe it's in October.
It is. It's coming up in just a couple weeks.
Right.
You'll have to get a
And
cat
I
before
did
then
want to
with the
say that
harness.
we're the
I know.
only museum in the district that has bags for your dogs.
All
If you're
right.
walking your dog around the district, you can go to the Carter and
Excellent.
get a poop bag. Is it okay to say that?
Yes,
It's a
it's a
poop bag.
poop bag. That's what you call it.
And that is a direct indication of our support of people with animals.
Right. And
Um,
also pick up your poop.
also pick up your poop, which I laugh at when I think like, oh my gosh, I'm picking up my dog's poop
Yes.
every day in front of everybody. But there you go.
Could be worse.
It could be worse. You could.
know.
Yeah.
And then my Instagram, if you want to see what I do on Instagram is, it's not very personal, but it's about my travels.
Okay, so I'm just going to interrupt because I know that one of your Instagram Instagram videos went viral.
Well, relatively.
That was for the Amon
my
Carter, but
experience.
yeah,
that
that
was
was
for
the
the Amon
Carter.
Carter.
We're
day,
definitely
yes.
going to show our audience
Yes.
that.
The my Instagram is A Walker, AWALKER with an MO at the end. I used to live in Missouri, so that if you want that reminder at it's A Walker MO. You'll find me there. And if you want to see what a director does and where they go, that's what my Instagram shows.
Right.
They did decide. We work with a I don't know if you know the private Catholic school called Cristo Rey.
Yes.
So Cristo Rey
It's in
does
Dallas.
yes, and well they're in Fort Worth as well. In
Oh,
fact,
are they? Okay.
the biggest or the most, well, I won't go into hyperbole, but the Fort Worth chapter has been around for less than 5 years, I think.
Okay.
And it's one of the most impactful in the country as far as their program. And they have a corporate work study program that all students have to participate in. The Carter is one of those work study destinations. So our marketing team, which has one of the interns this year, said, well, we should have the Gen Z point of view of the Carter. So they wrote a script, and they got the oldest man in the museum to
And that
deliver the
was
script.
you.
And that was me. So if you want to see Gen Z filtered through a 59-year-old
It was
man,
pretty funny.
there
actually.
it is.
And I love that
liked
it
it.
went viral.
Yeah,
I
it was
know,
great.
right?
It
I
was
didn't-
great.
Hey, I'm so impressed. You're an influencer and you didn't even know it.
For the moment.
Hey besties, it's Giving Art Museum. Need to touch some grass? Main character energy. Gabriel Daw ate and left no crumbs when he created Plexus number 34. Slay. What's slay mean? Giat. It's giving cottagecore. Come through with the riz. It's poppin'. It's giving me life.
It's a temporary
You
thing.
should share that on your travel Instagram.
I put it on my story.
Oh, did you? Okay.
Put it on my story.
I did notice, just one more thing, I did notice that you do travel all the time and you're going to all these different museums and checking out all these different artists. So
It's fun. You'll
your
when I
your
talk,
hobby is
yes.
your work.
It is. I'm very grateful. I will always be grateful to whoever brought me to this place because
Right.
it's a great
Well, we go back to the childhood experiences.
job. 100%.
So you have to thank your mom for leaving you at the museum.
Right? She only left me there for the weekend once, but she did come back on Monday.
My dad would lose me in the museum and I'd be in the Egyptian pyramid looking at embalming.
Oh my goodness.
I mean,
Well, night at the museum, right? So
Right.
there you go.
That's awesome.
But yes, and it's been a great journey so far.
Yes.
I hope that it continues here. I think the Carter is really in a position in Fort Worth with our colleagues in the cultural district to continue to offer the richest experiences for our visitors. So
Well, thank you so much, Andrew, for being with us today.
Yes,
We
Andrew.
appreciate
Thank
it.
you so much
Thank
for
you.
enlightening us,
Appreciate you.
educating us,
Yeah.
and telling us your stories. And we look forward to the future with you.
great,
Yeah.
great,
Can't wait to
Thank
get
you.
there
Thank you.
and see the exhibit.
great. Thanks so much. Yeah, really, right?
Yeah.
I think, you've got new friends.
Okay.
Come, don't worry about Cliff. I'll
Right.
take you through the show.
Okay. All right.
I'm like, you're going to be my new friend.
Okay, well, thanks for watching Haircolor Confessional. Please remember to subscribe and like and follow and do all the things to our social media. We really appreciate that. I'm Angela.
I'm Christine.
And thanks for watching. Bye.